Today's lecture is about competitive strategy, specifically Porter's five-force model. Michael Porter, the picture that you see right there, is from Harvard University, and he's the developer of modern thinking about competitive strategy in different industries. In the late 70s, he developed 3 models that help us with our thinking about strategy today. The five-force model, that's part of this lecture, the value chain, the next lecture, and the generic strategies, the last lecture for this week. At the center of the model is industry rivalry, or competition within the industry. How competitive is the market? Think about McDonald's. How many other fast food chains is McDonald's competing with? There's Burger King, In-N-Out, Wendy's, Easy Out Burger. Some smaller chains, plenty of competition. It's a very competitive marketplace, and you have to distinguish yourself with high quality, low cost, or service. With McDonald's, they offer very quick service at a reasonable price. It's a great food for on the go and great with the kiddies getting their Happy Meal. The next competitive force is the threat of new entrants. How many companies are seeking to break into the fast food chain industry? Really, it doesn't happen very often. Not many seek to compete this way because the cost is just too great to compete with fast food giants that already exist. The third competitive force is the threat of substitute products. This means other places that your customers might go to get what you offer. Not necessarily hamburgers, but food. It's a substitute for a hamburger. So, Panera Bread, Taco Bell, a pizza place, or a regular restaurant would all be substitute products for McDonald's offerings. Companies need to consider these competitors too, so they can think about competitive pricing and features that make people select fast food over other types of eateries. The fourth force is the bargaining power of buyers. In the case of McDonald's, that's you and me. We have a choice of what we eat, and there are plenty of other fast food restaurants we could go to. So, our bargaining power is very high. If the line is too long at McDonald's and Der Wiener Schnitzel is right across the street giving free sauerkraut dogs, we can drive across the street and eat there. There's no cost to us to do that. The fifth force is bargaining power of suppliers. That is, the companies supporting the products and services that lead to you getting a Big Mac. Someone sells beef, soda, bread, coffee, uniforms, cleaning supplies, and healthcare, etc., to make McDonald's organization run. If the companies that sell beef are scarce, like suppose there's only 2 of them that McDonald's could buy beef from, then the supplier power is high. They can raise the price of beef, and McDonald's has to pay because they cannot operate without it. On the other hand, if the uniform manufacturer decides to increase costs, there are a lot of companies that sell uniforms. McDonald's can switch suppliers without losing a lot of business. So in that case, the bargaining power is very low. There's one other thing about this model that we haven't talked about: government regulation, and that wasn't actually part of Porter's five-force model. People today say that's a 6th force that acts upon competition in industry and changes the model, but it isn't one of Porter's original ideas. There's a couple of terms I'd like to talk about before we go over the five-force model again: entry barriers and switching costs. An entry barrier is something that you can set up that makes it not attractive for competitors to come into your market. So this is used to reduce the force of the threat of new entrants. So think about some place like Southern California Edison. It's a utility, and everybody has to get their electric through Edison. So really, that's a big entry barrier. If you did happen to have the wherewithal to open an electric company, like maybe you were a solar company, that would require a massive infrastructure for you to be successful. So it's a very high entry barrier to getting into that market. If you were going to open a bar, you would need a liquor license. A liquor license can be very expensive, so that's kind of an entry barrier also. Suppose you wanted to open an online mega store like Amazon, except you'd call it Glamazon or something like that. To compete with Amazon, you would need to have real brand name recognition and customers that were very loyal to you, and you would have to have the infrastructure and the supply chain that helped you get your goods and services to people. And that is a huge infrastructure that is very, very expensive to set up. So it's very prohibitive for a new entrant into the megastore online market. Switching costs are a way to prevent your customers from going to substitute products. To achieve this, you can offer them deals and memberships, or you can have them sign contracts so that they are stuck with you for an agreed upon period of time. Being a member of a frequent flyer program like Southwest means that I'll earn free miles and rewards every time I fly with them. So when buying a ticket for a trip, I always go with them first. You've probably had contracts that you signed with your cell phone or maybe your cable TV that locked you in so that people couldn't switch. You couldn't switch from the particular company you were buying from until the contract ran out. So to increase switching costs, people use deals for staying with that certain company, loyalty programs, memberships, and contracts. This picture shows many, many strategies that people have mapped into Porter's model. So it's not just entry barriers and switching costs. There are several things that companies do to combat the competitive forces. And this is one model that they're all listed in from businessfundus.com. And you don't have to remember all of these, but just realize it's not just two things. Those are just two things that have been pulled out of it, but many, many ways to have companies fight the threats to new entrants and substitute products and the bargaining powers of suppliers and buyers. Let's take an example and then you do one on your own. This model is really for understanding the competitive forces that operate in an industry before you develop your own strategy for your company. So let's look at the cell phone industry. The intra-industry rivalry is very competitive. Pricing plans, trying to lure you away, celebrity endorsements. This is a very competitive industry. People compete on cost and on differentiation. Each offers features that the other may not have. The threat of new entrants, really cost prohibitive. It takes a lot of capital to compete with the large companies already doing business in the cell phone industry, so the threat of new entrants is very low. The threat of substitutes. What's a substitute product for a telephone? A landline, writing a letter, Skype, email, computer communication, or maybe notebooks or pad computing. So in this market, the threat of substitute products is still low because those things don't really offer the flexibility and ease that your cell phone does. Bargaining power of buyers, you and me. We can go to any phone provider we like if our current service agreement is expired. The service agreement is a switching cost. Until 2004, you couldn't take your phone number with you either. This was a big switching cost, but now you can switch when you like, though you might have to pay a penalty if you do it early. So our power is pretty high. Bargaining power of suppliers. I had no idea, so I had to look this one up on the internet. But the bottom line seems to be that the parts that go into making a cell phone, chips, batteries, SIM cards, etc., that there are many manufacturers for all of these parts, and the supply for them is very easy to come by. So the bargaining power of suppliers is low. Now let's think about entering the self-help app market with a new app that helps people quit smoking. It's kind of weird to think that if you're successful, your customer is going to leave you because they don't need your service anymore. I found a lot of apps that were helpful for people quitting smoking. So the intra-industry rivalry was high. That's right. The threat of new entrants, how hard is it to write an app that's going to help people quit smoking? Yes, high again. Everybody can do it if they can hire a programmer and come up with the content. The threat of substitute products, that would be drugs from the doctor's nicotine patch, taking a class to help someone quit. This is actually low because it's very convenient to have the app on the phone. Going to these other substitute products might be prohibitive just because of convenience. The bargaining power of buyers is super high. If there are 15 apps and they're all free, I can switch to any app I like anytime I like. Conversely, the bargaining power of suppliers, maybe that would be programmers to build the app, and its features is low because you can hire them easily. There are many, many producers of apps, and you can pick from any one of them to develop your app for quitting smoking. This might be a poor choice for an industry to enter if you want to make any money.